Hello, good day everyone. So we are Group 6 and our topic is Evaluating Selection Techniques and Decisions. Characteristics of effective selection techniques. So, effective selection techniques have 4 characteristics. They are reliable, valid, cost-efficient, and legally defensible. Reliability. Reliability is the extent to which a score from a selection measure is stable and free from error. If a score from a measure is not stable or error-free, it is not useful. So sa reliability daw, dapat kapag magme-measure ka, dapat yung result ay same pa din sa una. Kung baga stable or consistent. Consistent dapat result kahit may oras na nagdaan. For example, imagine a kitchen scale. Tinimbang mo yung 5 pounds ng potatoes sa umaga. Tapos yung scale ay reliable. So dapat kapag tinimbang mo uli yung potatoes, dapat ang lumabas doon ay 5 pounds pa din. Kahit tumagal ng ilang oras yung measure mo ulit dun sa mga potatoes. Unless na lang syempre pag niluto mo na. So reliability refers to the extent to which assessments are consistent. So, test-retest reliability. Each one of several people take the same test twice. The scores from the first administration of the test are correlated with scores from the second to determine whether they are similar. If they are, the rest is said to have temporal stability. The test scores are stable across time and not highly susceptible to such random daily conditions as illness, fatigue, stress, or uncomfortable testing conditions. There is no standard amount of time that should elapse between the 2 administrations of the test. However, the time interval should be long enough so the specific test answers have not been memorized, but short enough so that the person has not changed significantly. So dito sa test-retest reliability, mine-measure nito yung consistency ng results kapag inulit mo yung same test on the same sample at a different point in time. Kapag nagawa na yung dalawang test, tapos yung same result, ayun nga ang tawag dun ay temporal stability. For example, nag-devise ka ng questionnaire para ma-measure yung IQ ng isang grupo ng participants. In-administer mo yung test 2 months apart to the same group of people. Pero yung result is significantly different. So, ang lumalabas dito, yung test-retest reliability of the IQ questionnaire is low. So, kaya siya na iba ang result. Siguro yung mga nag-take nung test ay naka-experience ng iba't ibang mood or external conditions might affect their ability to respond accurately. Alternate form reliability. With the alternate form reliability method, 2 forms of the same time are constructed. As shown in Table 6.1, a sample of 100 people are administered both forms of the test. Half of the sample first receive Form A and the other half Form B. This counterbalancing of test-taking order is designed to eliminate any effects that taking one form of the test first may have on scores on the second form. For example, nagbigay ka ng questions sa group of people and then, after the passage of some time, binigay mo ulit yung questions. Pero, naka-rephrase na siya. Iniba mo pero ayun pa din, katulad pa din ng dating question dun sa question kanina. Kung similar pa din yung result, so that we conclude that the test has alternate forms reliability. Internal reliability. A third way to determine the reliability of a test or inventory is to look at the consistency with which an applicant responds to item measuring a similar dimension or construct. Example, personality, ability, area of knowledge. The extent to which similar items are answered in similar ways is referred to as internal consistency and measures item stability. So in general, the longer the test, the higher its internal consistency. That is, the agreement among responses to the various test items. For example, kung yung IQ test contains sections of supposedly equal difficulty, yung participants ay dapat ma-achieve similar scores on all sections. Another factor that can affect the internal reliability of a test is item homogeneity. Example, yung final exam. Pag kinompute natin yung reliability ng buong exam, mababa siya. Bakit? Kasi yung material na ginamit sa test question ay hindi pare-parehas. They are measuring knowledge from the 3 topics areas, 2 sources, and 2 knowledge types. Kapag pinaghiwa-hiwalay natin ng by chapter, source at item type, the reliability of the separate test components ay tataas because we would be looking at groups of homogeneous items.
Characteristics of effective selection techniques. Continuation. Good morning everyone. My name is Jennylyn Barcenas and this is my report. First, the scorer reliability. It is a fourth way of assessing reliability and also refers to the consistency when different people who score the same test agree. It indicates how consistent test scores are if the test is scored by 2 or more people. Example, grading essays. Next, evaluating reliability of a test. 2 factors must be considered. First, magnitude of reliability coefficient. It is to quantify the degree of consistency. There are different ways to calculate the coefficient. Example, the test retest reliability and iterator reliability. Second, the people who will be taking the test. Now let us discuss about validity. It is the degree to which inferences from scores on tests on assessments are justified by evidence. Test is valid if it is measure what claims to measure. It is formulated by Kelly, 1972. One is about content validity. Rossiter, 2008, defined content validity as the degree to which elements of an assessment instrument are relevant to a representative of the targeted construct for a particular assessment. That's all. Thank you.
Good day everyone. I am Jovie Bermundo. For today's video, I will discuss the continuation of the topic about the common strategies to investigate the validity of scores on a test. The first one was a content validity, which is already tackled. Next is the criterion validity. Criterion validity, which refers to the extent to which a test score is related to some measure of job performance called criterion. Is commonly used criteria include supervisor ratings of performance, actual measure of performance, example, sales, number of complaints, number of arrests made, attendance, tardiness, absenteeism, tenure, training performance, example, the police academy grades, and disciplines problems. It is associated with the extent to which one measure is related to an outcome. Ibig sabihin po, ito yung pagme-measure kung karapat-dapat ka ba dun sa work na yun. It is a measure of effectiveness. Let's say, nag-recruit ka ng telemarketers and you're looking for candidates who can produce a high number of sales per day. In order you to find out whether your pre-employment test is an accurate prediction of your candidate productivity, you will need to find out if there is a positive correlation between a candidate test scores and their average sales per day. They use a kind of criterion test in order you to know if the kung gaano kahusay yung resulta ng unang test sa isa pang klaseng test. Criterion validity is established using one of the two research design, the concurrent validity and the predictive validity. Now, let's first demonstrate the concurrent validity. With the concurrent validity design, a test is given to a group of employees who are already on the job. The scores on the test are then correlated with the measure of the employee's current performance. The concurrent validity is the same with criterion validity. Another example of this is isa kang business owners, may mga ilang procedures upang malaman kung gaano ka-productive ang inyong empleyado. But, gusto mong malaman kung yung unang test na kung magiging accurate ba siya sa another test. So, after the test, the result will need to check if there is any correlation. If the test is produce similar results, then the new test is to be concurrent validity. However, when we say the predictive validity, it is the design which is the test is administered to a group of job applicants who are going to be hired. The test scores are then compared with a future measure of job performance. Ibig sabihin nito, ang test ay ibinibigay marahil sa mga aplikante. And after those individual work in the job for a year, their test score are correlated with their first year job performance scores. So, ibig sabihin na ang test scores na iyon ay nagpipredict sa future job performance mo. In predictive validity, malalaman mo din kung gaano kalaki ang pinagbago ng behavior mo. But because it is really practical to hire every applicant, the predictive design is not often used. Instead, most criterion validity studies use a concurrent design. The next one is construct validity. The construct validity is a theoretical concept, theme, or ideas based on empirical observation. It is a variable that usually not directly measurable. Construct validity is the most theoretical of the validity types. Basically, it is defined as the extent to which a test actually measures the construct that it purports to measure. So basically, when we say construct validity, it is checking if the constructs being measured is actually legit, kung nag-i-exist ba talaga ang construct na yon. When we say construct, it is an informed scientific idea developed, hypothesized to describe or explain behavior. So ito yung mga variables na pinag-uusapan sa psychology about traits, characteristics, psychological traits, and personality. So the main goal of this is to test the construct kung nag-i-exist pa ba ang construct. I mean, kung nag-i-exist pa ba ang construct na pinipose mo. Ang example nito ay kung natatandaan natin yung factor traits theory. The factor traits theory ay ang main goal nila kasi 'di ba yung una gusto nila gusto maging science na yung psychology. 'Di ba hindi tayo maging science kasi ang concept nila Freud ay very abstract. Hindi natin ma-measure. So the psychologists, they want to become a science. Gusto nilang i-confirm the validity of our concepts of our construct. Kaya ang ginawa nila ay they created a measure or the test or the instrument that will measure those hypothetical concept na pinipropose natin. So the test na ginagawa natin when it comes sa industrial psychology, it is a way to confirm the construct na pinipropose natin. You are giving an evidence that construct exists. So if the test ay napatunayan na nagme-measure siya ng construct, which is yung construct na pinipropose natin, then there is an evidence to construct validity. So the last one is the phase validity. The phase validity is the type of validities concerned with whether a measure seems relevant and appropriate for what is assessing on the surface. This perception is important because if a test items do not appear valid, the test takers and administrators will not have confidence in the results. When the applicant has a good phase validity, it means that anyone who reviews your measure says that it seems to be measuring what it's supposed to. While if it has a poor phase validity, the someone reviewing your measure may be left confused about what you are measuring. But just because a test has phase validity does not mean it is a valid. For example, I describe you as sometimes being sad, sometimes successful ka. I would probably say na accurate ako. But ang mga ito ay kaya din i-describe ng iba. So the phase validity is not enough.
Good day everyone, I am Princess Cayacay, and today I'm going to discuss my part, which is finding reliability and validity information That is also the continuation of characteristics of effective selection techniques. So from the previous discussion, we already tackled about the different ways on measuring the reliability or the degree to which the result of a measurement, calculation, or specification can be defended on the accurate, as well as the validity or state of being valid. Even though most of you will eventually be involved with some form of employee testing, few of you will actually conduct a study on a test reliability and validity. Consequently, where do we get this information? So here are the most common and outstanding sources of the test information. We have the 17th Mental Measurement Yearbook, or the MMY, that contains information about thousands of different psychological tests as well as reviews by the test experts. And also the test in print 7th. So let's proceed to the cost efficiency. If two or more tests have similar validities, then cost should be considered. For example, in selecting police officers, it is common to use a test cognitive ability such as Wonderlic Personal Test or the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale. So when we say Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale, or the WAIS, it is an IQ test designed to measure intelligence and cognitive ability in adults and older adolescents. While the Wonderlic Personal Test, or the WPT, is a standardized, self-administered assessment of general mental ability. Although both tests have similar reliabilities and validities, sinasabi dito that if we use Wonderlic Personal Test, it will be easier for us to gather the information and also less expensive, since it only costs a few dollars per applicant and can be administered to groups of people in only 12 minutes. Unlike Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale, that is an hour per applicant and cost of more than $100 per applicant. A particular test is usually designed to be administered either to individual applicants or to a group of applicants. Certainly, group testing is usually less expensive and more efficient than individual testing. But then, there is a possibility that the most important information can be lost in group testing. Since we are in the 21st century, a recent innovation in the administration of psychological tests involves the use of computers and the internet. This type of testing that they implemented can lower testing costs, decrease feedback time, and yield a result in which the test takers can have great confidence. Therefore, many public and private employers are switching to this method. So let's proceed to the computer adaptive testing, or CAT. How they operate this type of testing? The computer adjusts the next question to be asked on the basis of how the test taker responded to the previous discussion or questions. For example, if the test taker succeed to pass the 3 multiplication questions, then the computer will automatically adjust and move on to other categories instead of asking you for more multiplication questions. But if the test taker failed to answer it correctly, then the computer will adjust and go back to the basic questions. The logic behind CAT is that if a test taker can't answer easy questions such as addition or subtraction, it doesn't make sense to ask questions about algebra and geometry. But the advantages to CAT is that fewer test items are required. Tests take less time to complete, finer distinctions in application and applicability can be made. Test takers can receive immediate feedback and can be interpreted not only on the number of questions answered correctly, but on which questions were correctly answered. So that's all for my report. Let's have another reporter to discuss establishing the usefulness of...
Okay, so now let us talk about establishing the usefulness of a selection device. So kanina guys, natakal na nila ang reliability and validity ng isang test. So ngayon, reliable man at valid ang isang test, hindi ibig sabihin nito ay magiging useful na din siya sa lahat ng pagkakataon. Okay? May mga instances na kahit na reliable at valid ang isang test, hindi naman ito pwedeng gamitin sa isang specific na scenario. Okay? So halimbawa, may 50 job openings and meron ding exactly 50 job seekers na nag-a-apply. Okay? So kahit na reliable at valid yung test na nais mong ipatake sa lahat ng aplikante para makita kung sino sana yung deserving sa kanila, nawawalan ng saysay yung test dahil kailangan mo pa ring i-hire lahat ng aplikante despite of their performance kasi nga 50 din ang kailangan mong i-hire. Okay? So in connection with that, to determine how useful a test would be in any given situation, several formulas and tables have been designed. Okay? And isa na nga dito ang tinatawag natin na Taylor-Russell table. Okay? So sa Taylor-Russell table guys, if an institution or organization ay gumagamit ng isang test para sa mga aplikante, gamit ang Taylor-Russell table, maaari nilang makita kung gaano nga ba karaming employees or future employees ang magiging successful sa kanilang trabaho. And in order for us to use the Taylor-Russell table, we need the following values. Okay, so we have the criterion validity coefficient, selection ratio, and base rate. Okay, so now let us talk about those values individually. Okay, so first, we have criterion validity coefficient. Okay, ang criterion validity coefficient guys is the value that refers to a test correlation with a concrete outcome. Okay, it is also used to report evidence of validity for intended interpretation of test scores. Okay, and we have two ways of obtaining criterion validity coefficient. Okay, yung una is to conduct a criterion validity study with test scores correlated with some measures of job performance. Pero hindi maiiwasan na kailangan mo nang alamin ng isang institution or organization if yung gagawin nga ba nilang test ay useful or hindi bago sila mag-invest ng time at pera. Kaya madalas, ang nababanggit kong unang paraan ay yung impractical. Okay? So, dito pumapasok ang validity generalization. Okay? Which is the second way of obtaining criterion validity study. Okay? In validity generalization, it typically involves correcting all of correlations being examined for methodological and statistical limitations and flows and providing estimates of correlation or results that would have been obtained in the absence of such limitations. At kapag mas mataas ang validity coefficient guys, mas mataas din yung possibility na maging useful yung test. Okay? And next is we have selection ratio. It is the percentage of people an organization must hire. And the selection ratio is determined by the formula. Okay? Selection ratio is equal to number hired divided by number of applicants. For example, okay, the number hired is equal to 50 and the number of applicant is 250. Okay? So we have 50 divided by 250 and the result is 0.20. Therefore, ang selection ratio natin dito guys ay 0.20. So, let's move to the next one. Okay. So, the final information or data we need is the base rate. Okay, base rate is the percentage of employees currently on the job who considered successful. So we also have two ways of obtaining the value of base rate. So first, employees are split into two equal groups based on their scores on some criterion such tenure or performance. Okay, dahil nga sa hinati sa dalawang grupo ang employees, ang isang grupo ay considered successful at yung isang grupo naman ay considered unsuccessful. Ang magiging base rate natin dito ay 0.50 or 50%. Okay? Sa second way naman, which is choosing a criterion measure score which all employees are considered successful. So dito, magsiset ng isang criterion ang manager or kung sino mang in charge bilang basihan kung sino nga ba ang mga employees and makukonsider na successful. Okay? For example, sa isang real estate agency, ang agent lang na makakapagbenta ng 500,000 pataas ay i-consider na successful. Okay? So now that we already the three information that we need, we can now proceed to Taylor-Russell table. So, paano nga ba ginagamit ang Taylor-Russell table? Okay? So, guys, this is the Taylor-Russell table. Okay? We have the base rate in percent on the first column on the left side. Yung variable na R na nakikita nyo sa second column is the criterion validity coefficient at yung values naman sa taas yung nasa unang row. Yun ang values ng selection ratio. So now let's have an example on how to use the Taylor-Russell table. Okay, so suppose that the value of criterion validity coefficient is 0.40. The selection ratio is 0.30 and the base rate is 0.50. Okay, so based on the table, let us locate first the base rate which is 0.50 or 50%. Okay, and then isunod naman natin hanapin yung 0.40 under ng criterion validity coefficient. Okay, and last, we need to locate the selection ratio in which in this case is 0.30. As you can see, ang intersection ng tatlong value na given based on Taylor-Russell table is 0.69. Okay, so therefore, if the organization uses the particular selection test, 69% of future employees are likely to be considered successful. Okay, so that's all for my report today.
Good morning, my name is Bernadeth from 3A Psychology. Ang topic ko po ay establishing the usefulness of a selection device. Ito pong graph ay kay Taylor-Russell table. Next, the test effectiveness, the number of points in each quadrant is the total and the following formula is used. Point in quadrant 2 and 4 divided total point in all quadrants. Points in all quadrant 1 and 2 divided to total points in all quadrants. Loshi table. Loshi, Baldwin, and Ackler 1958 were created to do just that. To use this table, 3 pieces of information are needed. Another way to determine the value of tests in given situation by computing the amount of money an organization would save it used to the test selection employee. Dito sa information na dito mo malalaman utility formula. Next, Loshi individual prediction table, applicant score and selection test. Dito sa example na to, dito malalaman kung paano mag-compute. If the percentage of the first formula is higher than from the second, our proposed test should increase selection accuracy. Sa taas ang formula, sa baba kung paano i-compute, then dito sa baba selection nation conversation table for utility formula.
Determining the fairness of a test. Once a test has been determined to be reliable and valid and to have utility for an organization, the next step is to ensure that the test is fair and unbiased. Although the terms fair and unbiased were kind of similar, they still have different meanings. The term biased or unbiased refers to technical aspects of a test, and makoconsider na bias ang isang test if there are group differences like sex, race, or age in test scores na unrelated dun sa test na minemeasure. The term fairness naman can include bias but also includes political and social issues. Typically, a test is considered fair if people of equal probability of success on a job have an equal chance of being hired. The first step in determining a test's potential bias is finding out whether it will result in adverse impact. Adverse impact is the negative and discriminatory effect on a minority group that can occur during unbiased selection procedures. Adverse impact is similar to unconscious bias. It can result in fewer qualified minorities being hired, promoted, or considered for other employment opportunities based on discriminatory reasons. There are two basic ways to determine this: looking at test results or anticipating adverse impact prior to the test. As mentioned in Chapter 3, adverse impact occurs if the selection rate for any group is less than 80% of the highest scoring group or the practical significance, and the difference is statistically significant or the statistical significance. In addition to adverse impact, an organization might also determine whether a test has single group validity, meaning that the test will significantly predict performance for one group and not others. Para matest yung single group validity, separate correlations are computed between the test and the criterion for each group. Then if both correlations are significant, the test does not exhibit single group validity and it passes this fairness hurdle. If, however, only one of the correlations is significant, the test is considered fair for only that one group. Lastly, single group validity is very rare and is usually the result of small sample sizes and other methodological problems.
Differential validity. A test is valid for two groups but more valid for one than for other. Single group validity is the test that valid on for one group, and the differential validity is the test that valid for both groups, but it is more valid for one than the other. Ang single validity ay para lamang sa one valid group daw, tas ang differential validity ay predictive para sa lahat or both groups but more valid in different degree. Making the hiring decision. A final decision must be made as to which applicant or applicants to hire. This may seem to be an easy decision: hire the applicants with the highest test scores, but the decision becomes more complicated as both the number and variety or test increase. Multiple regression is done by statistical procedure. Kung higit sa isang criterion valid test ang ginamit, ang mga scores sa mga test dapat pagsamahin. Ito ay ginagawa ng isang statistical procedure na kilala o kung tawagin ay multiple regression, with each test score weighted according to kung gaano ito kahusay. An adjusted top-down selection. Applicants are ranked order on the basis of their test scores. Selection is made by starting with the highest score and moving down until opening have been filled. In a compensatory approach to top-down selection, the assumption is that if multiple test scores are used, the relationship between a low on one test can be compensated for by a high score on another. Ang advantage nito ay sa pagpili ay sa pagkuha ng mga nangungunang score o mas mataas na score ay siyang mag-gain ng utility in organization. At ang disadvantage naman ay maaari daw magkaroon ng result na mataas na epekto na binabawasan ang flexibility of organization to use non-test factors such as references or organizational fit.
Good day everyone! Ako po si Maicajoy Pontiga and ako po yung magko-continue ng ni-report ni Ms. Matanguihan, which is making the hiring decision. So, continue ko na po sa Rule of 3. So, Rule of 3 also known as Rule of 5. So, Ito ay isang technique na kadalasang ginagamit sa public sector. So dito sa rule of 3, yung mga names ng top scorers ay ibibigay sa isang tao and siya ang may kakayahang gumawa ng desisyon. Sa madaling salita, ito ay binibigay sa mga public chief, HR director. So those person will be the one who will make the hiring decision. So ano nga po ba ang pagkakaiba ni top-down selection at ni rule of 3? Sa top-down selection po, no choice tayo. Dahil kung sino yung nag-top 3, yun na po yung i-hire ng company. So for example, si Kilborn po ay 99, si Latterman ay 98, si King ay 91. So yung tatlo po na yon, sila po yung ma-hired. Samantalang sa rule of 3 po, pwedeng mamili ang mga itinilagang tao base sa scores nila. Magsisimula po tayo sa O'Donnell. So si O'Donnell ay 70, which is yun po yung passing score pataas. Ang sinasabi po dito sa rule of 3 is pwedeng mamili ang tao na mag-hire or magdedesisyon doon sa 8 tao na nakapasa base sa kinakailangan ng kumpanya. So, passing scores naman po tayo. Kung ang tanong sa top-down selection ay who will perform the best in the future, ibig sabihin nakabase sila sa best, kung sino yung nakakuha ng mataas na scores. Mantalang dito sa passing scores, ang tanong ay who will be able to perform at an acceptable level in the future. Ibig sabihin, meron silang pamimilian or meron silang isiniset na passing scores para magkaroon sila ng choices kung sino ba yung kanilang i-hired. For example, kapag tayo nag-entrance exam sa ating papasukang school, so may siniset ang school ng passing scores nila kung saan kapag tayo ay nakaabot or nakalagpas doon sa passing scores nila is makakapasok tayo sa school na yon. And isa ko pang example dito is kapag tayo ay gusto natin maging dean's lister. So meron siniset din ang school ng scores kung saan doon sila magbabase para makapasok tayo sa dean's lister. And so as you can see po, kay O'Donnell po nag-start yung passing score na 70 hanggang kay Kilborn na high score na 99. So ang kagandahan po dito is kapag kailangan ng company ng female, pwede po nilang piliin or may chance na ma-hire si Winfrey na score ay 88 at si O'Donnell na ang score na 70 kahit hindi sila yung nakakuha ng mataas na score. So, under passing scores, meron po tayong multiple cut-off approach and multiple hurdle approach kung saan ito ay ginagamit kapag ang score sa selection test at performance test ay hindi tugma. So, dito po sa multiple cut-off approach is ang applicants po ay mag-administered ng isang test lamang. So, kapag sila po ay bumagsak sa test na yon, then they would not be considered further for employment. And sa multiple hurdle approach naman po is mag-a-administer din po ng isang test ang applicant. So kapag po sila ay bumagsak, sila po ay eliminated na and makukonsider na hindi na pwedeng mag-test pa. At kapag naman po ang applicants ay pumasa, then yung kanila pong selection test at performance test ay nagtugma and dun po sila ma-hired. To clarify the difference between a multiple cut-off and multiple hurdle approach, let us look at the example. First is multiple cut-off approach. So, as you can see po, dyan sa picture, 180 po ang total ng cost of test. So, kung 180 po ang total ng cost of test, sa bawat isa sa 100 applicants, ibig sabihin po, 18,000 ang total cost ng isang organization para makapag-administer ng test ang lahat ng applicant. So next is multiple hurdle approach naman po. Dito, pwede tayong mag-administer gamit ang cheapest test or the strength test sa 100 aplikante. So dahil po 10% of applicants ang nag-fail kanina sa nauna kong naipakita, then now we can administer the next cheapest test to the remaining 90. So yung process lang po is tuloy-tuloy hanggang sa ma-administered lahat. And magre-resulta po ito sa makakasave tayo ng 3,900 cost dahil 14,100 lamang po ang magagamit dito, unlike po doon sa multiple cut-off approach na 18,000 ang naging total cost. So ang tanong, bakit daw po hindi ginagamit palagi ang multiple hurdle approach samantalang ito po yung mas nakakatipid? So ito po is dahil para po makakuha tayo ng scores is maglalaan po tayo ng maraming oras. So, the last is banding. So, banding takes into consideration the degree of error associated with any test score. So, dito meron tayong tinatawag na standard error kung saan ito ay sumasagot sa tanong na ilang points ba ang naging pagitan ng test scores ng bawat applicants. For example, suppose we have a test with a reliability of 0.90 and the standard deviation of 13.60, the calculation of the standard error would be standard error is equals to 13.60 our standard deviation. Square root of 1 minus 0.90 our reliability. Standard error is equals to 13.60 square root of 0.10. Standard error is equals to 13.60 times 0.316. Standard error is equals to 4.30. So, 4.30 po ang ating naging standard error. So, imumultiply po natin ito sa 1.96. Ang 1.96 po ang standard score na associated sa 95% level of confidence. So, 4.3 times 1.96 is equals to 8.4. Tapos, imaminus po natin si 99 na score ni Kilborn, which is the highest score sa ating 8.4. So, 99 minus 8.4 is equals to 90.6. Meaning that all applicants scoring between 91 and 99 are considered statistically to have the same score. Yon, so dito na po nagtatapos ang aming report. Maraming salamat po sa inyong pakikinig.